Okay, so again, welcome everyone to this webinar, What's New and What's Coming. The first part of this webinar, we're going to be jumping around a little bit and looking at some of these different miscellaneous features that have been released. I don't want to spend too much time on them, but I do want to show them off. One thing we'll take a look at quickly, and now this has been out for a little while, but I still find people not using it as much or maybe not aware of it, is you now have the ability to add a quantity and rate on external expenses that is specific to the line item itself. This is something where before you were just entering a cost and a percentage markup on the estimate, but you can now come in here and do something like, say, a freelancer is going to be working for 12 hours and the cost value of the freelancer, what you pay them is, let's say, $50 an hour. That will then enter the cost, which you can then choose to mark up. So we're going to mark that up by 100%, not 1,000, 100%, and then mark that up to, in this case, 1,200 as an example. So quantity and rates on external expenses, on estimates, really useful, does carry into the actual as well. So if you're not, if you're managing a lot of external expenses and you're used to entering a cost, you can enter a quantity and a rate, and that will flow through into the Jobs Financials tab. So I'd recommend checking that out. There's another thing that's come out that's financial related, and it relates to invoice printouts. Now this might seem like a bit of a minor item, but it's something that we've had a lot of requests for. And that is the option to have a print option B on a multi-job invoice so that you can tweak it and customize it on the fly. So what I'm talking about is when you have a single invoice for multiple jobs and you look at the client-facing version, by default, the least amount of information you could possibly provide would at least be the job names. What are the names of the jobs on this invoice? And that was, you could expand it to include more detail, but you couldn't include any less. If you have 5 jobs on an invoice, you have to at least include the name of the job on the invoice. But a lot of people are giving us feedback saying that doesn't always work. Sometimes I want to just have, one line that says, hey, here's that invoice that we talked about, which you can now do. The way that you can do this is from the multi-job invoice details page, you can choose the print parameters button, and there is a checkbox that says use or enable print option B. That will then allow you to write anything you want. So, the invoice we discussed, that's lunch, and put in a value. The goal down at the bottom is the total value of the invoice. So if you're going to add multiple line items, you'd want the total value of the line items you add to equal that goal value. Submit that, and we can now produce our client-facing version, which has just a single line item, the invoice we discussed at lunch, being my example. So you can, tweak and customize that invoice on the fly to show little to no information if you want. If your client doesn't need all the breakdown, they just want a single line item. I know that that's a pretty big one for a few people, including an agency that I'm working with myself, that's going to benefit a lot. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to take a look at in this miscellaneous portion is the benefits of the removal of the iframe in the system. Function point, a lot of the pages were built in what's called an iframe, and I'm a little bit of a layman on the technical side of things, so I'm probably not explaining it that well. But the system is actually, we've removed that iframe structure from the program, and that allows you to do a lot of things that you couldn't do before. For example, if I was on another page in the system and I refreshed the entire system, so just refreshed up here or hit Command R, whatever I want to do to refresh my page. Previously, it would bring you back to the dashboard. Furthermore, trying to open up something in a new tab or new window would only give you a small little version of that window. You wouldn't get the whole thing. Whereas now you could be halfway through editing something. So maybe I'm editing or adding an estimate. I don't want to lose my information, but I need to look up, say, a company name or add a new contact to a company. I can right-click and navigate to that company in a new tab or new window without losing the information on my first page, and can continue to add in new tabs and new windows for those like myself who are a bit of a tab monster, and I like to do things in a lot of different tabs, a lot of different windows. And you can link directly to an item in the system, whether that's a link that you're adding to a job and function point, or a link you're sending, via email or Slack chat to one of your colleagues. Now, if you want to have someone take a look at a specific note or a specific job, you can actually copy that link, send it to them, and as long as they're logged into the program, if they're not logged in, it'll bring them to a login page. If they are logged in, then it'll bring them directly to the item in question. So I know that that's a pretty big efficiency for people once you get used to it, and there's a lot of other examples of why you might want to pull things into different tabs or send direct links and things like that. Anything I'm missing on the iframe item? I know that you were pretty big into that one.
No, you've summed it up really, really nicely, and I'm just super excited because I wrote down tab monster because I think that you've coined a new term. I don't know if that's the first time you've used it, but being a tab monster is a very, very, that's very funny. I'm going to use that myself. But no, you've summarized it really well. And yeah, I'm a big fan of that refresh because I know with users I've talked to before, sometimes you do need to refresh the page for whatever reason. And now you don't have to kind of right click, refresh this, load this pane only. It was a bit of a pain. So I'm stoked about this one. So I'm glad you're showing it.
Awesome, thank you. One other thing I'll mention is that we are having, some of the new branding and the color variants being updated in the system. You'll see that in some of the preview of the new features that are coming as well. You'll see some of that color scheme update in just a bit. The next thing that I want to touch on is the iPhone update, the app update. Now, I know that there is an Android version in the works, so hopefully we'll see that in the not too distant future. I will send a link out to this page in the follow-up email for this webinar, but there's a lot of new stuff in the iPhone app, and I was blown away by the new version when I saw it. I love it. If you're not using it to track time, I'd highly recommend checking it out, especially for those of you that track on the road. And then sharing it with your teams can be really beneficial as well, because I find it to be more user-friendly than the system as far as just quickly tracking time. And there's a bunch of different things that you can now do, including tracking time directly to tasks, which is really nice, which we'll see an overview here. You can also track time offline. So if you don't have an internet connection, if you don't want to use your data on your phone, you can track time offline and then submit that time entry later on. And it's just really user friendly. I was really impressed by it when I saw the new version, and I'd really recommend checking it out. You can mark your work as favorites now within the app, which is really nice. You don't have to do that outside. There's an iWatch version as well for those of you that are using the iWatch. So I'd really recommend checking that out. Again, I will send this link in the follow-up email, so keep an eye out for that, but highly recommend checking that out. Okay. So those are some of the miscellaneous items. Now we're actually going to jump into some of the more, some of the bigger things that have been released, looking at some of the schedule items and then the new big shared task feature that we'll take a look at. So I'm going to close some of these tabs here. I'll be the tab monster. And I'm going to navigate to a schedule. So I have a schedule here that I created as an example. And you'll notice that I land on the Gantt chart. Now I want to talk about some of the different Gantt chart improvements and some of the things that you can do. One is that, well, one of the goals that we have is trying to make it so that you never really need to move away from the Gantt chart, so that you're really just using the Gantt chart as your main area of work. For those of you that are more visually inclined and prefer a visual structure like this, then you should be able to do pretty much everything that you need to without having to do a lot of typing. So for example, you can now add in dates directly on the Gantt chart and build your lines without having to go back to the grid view. Once you have those, you can do a whole bunch of things with them now that you couldn't do before. So let's say that I want this work, starting on the 8th. I can drag that line to the 8th, and I want the research work to go for, let's say 3 days. I can then build out my entire schedule from this view, including the dependencies. So this is something that when the dependencies was first released wasn't available, but you can now just select and drag and connect these tasks directly to each other. And it's a lot easier to build these items out, using this visual editor than in the past. And you can do some pretty cool stuff. So for example, I can bring in these 2 tasks here, and perhaps I want them to be equal in time, but I want them both to be dependent upon the completion of the previous task. So notice how there's a multi-task dependency that's occurring here. And I'm doing it all with just my mouse. I know a lot of people don't like to, to use their keyboards. They're more mouse people. So I'm just, dragging in dates, making the connections. It's really, really easy to work with. And it's a huge improvement over what it was before. So I'm really happy about it. And this functionality does extend to, other ways that you work with this. So for example, if I want to make adjustments to the schedule, I can choose to have the system adjust the dependent tasks when I move a predecessor. So now, by selecting this, if I were to select research and move it by a week, then everything else moves along accordingly. Now, if I drag it back, then everything comes back with it. So it's, it allows you to make, big bulk adjustments for all of the dependent items, and perhaps not any of the other non-dependent items very easily. So if there was a, for example, this client management task here is not moving as I move everything else. So some much more advanced functionality on the schedule grid, on the Gantt chart view. There's a few other things here that you can do that are relating to using this as your main view, and that is around adding tasks and adding groups of tasks. And there's some cool things that you can do here. Adding tasks is simple. Of course, I can just select add task and it'll just add a task to the schedule. I can also select to add a group and it'll do the same. But a really neat thing that you can do is you can copy entire task groups. And when you copy an entire task group, it drops it in below. And I can, of course, give it a new name. So I might call this, for example, phase 2. And this is really, really cool because if you have a job where it might be going on for a very long time, you might have a single schedule, but more aspects are coming in. Different phases of the schedule are coming in. You can add in entire, phases or entire task groups without having to re-enter any of the information. I could then select the entire group and move that entire group along, even if I don't have a dependency structure, just by selecting the entire group. So I could, move this entire group to say, start a little bit later on in the schedule, and I now have a new phase without having to do a bunch of manual work. And I can see that all of those tasks here. So that is a pretty awesome solution to the struggle that I know a lot of agencies I've spoken with have had around, I want to have multiple schedules to a job, or I want to have multiple phases to a schedule while I add additional information later on. And those are things that you can do in a much, much easier way now. Any comments on any of this that I've shown so far? Anything that there's a few other items before we move on, but anything that I've missed or any comments you want to make?
No, we haven't had any questions either. So be encouraged, people. Feel free to type questions in if you've got them. But no, that you're showing it just fantastically. I'm really glad you're doing these because you describe things and show things very well. So well done, Mark.
Awesome. All right. So a few other items on this page, and actually before we take a look at that, I'm going to jump back into the grid view. There's something that I want to show here that I know a lot of people who use a schedule, unless you're reading all the release information which we put together, which, by the way, I want to point out that Emma does a lot of work on. So when you're seeing release related information in the library and things like that, you're getting a lot of Emma's good work there. But one thing that I know a lot of people aren't aware of is in the schedule grid view, which a lot of people do use for their scheduling, you can actually resize the different columns now. And it just makes working with the whole thing just a lot easier, especially if you have, information that, you want to give more screen real estate to. So perhaps descriptions, if you want to show more description, or if it's not important to you, you can, of course, size it down. So resizing it, really nice, as well as when you're editing it, you're not like seeing a visual adjustment of where the field is and where your cursor goes, which I know that was a bit of an annoyance before being able to adjust the size of these fields, was when you would select to edit something, you'd get a bit of a visual jump, and you're not getting that anymore. It's much, much easier to work with. You can go and do all of this inline editing, which in the long-term future is a goal that we have for the entire system at some point, to be able to quickly do inline edits without having to jump around a bunch of different screens in the system. So much easier to work with there. And then lastly, on this specific topic, let's talk about the shared task. So I'm going to, I think what I'm going to do actually here is I'm going to delete this second phase that I added earlier.
And Mark, I'm just going to chime in for a second just to really thank everyone who does submit when they notice things like the jumpiness and those requests we do really take seriously, and it's through a lot of that user feedback that we've been making these changes and improvements. So everyone's been really patient with us, and thanks for that. But really do be encouraged to submit your thoughts and feedback, because we absolutely read it, take it into account, and do try to amend things when we're hearing from you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that there's, we do get a lot of feedback, but the more the better. So by all means, please continue to do so, and thank you for those that have submitted in the past. And this next thing that I'm going to show comes from a lot of those submissions. This is a very highly requested feature. If I add a new task in here, I could choose to add a shared task. Adding a shared task is basically just a way of assigning multiple people to a task. So I have a shared task, and when I choose to assign that to individuals, I can just multi-select. So I'm going to drag this up here so we get a bit more view. Notice I'm just dragging it up. I'm going to move to the top. And then let's choose who we're assigning it to. So right when I select the to area, it gives me the drop down. And I can go in here and assign to as many people as I want. So if I want Darren, Sean, and let's say Thomas working on this, I'm also going to bring in a person, one of the account execs, let's say Brock. So I've added all those individuals, and notice the plus icon letting us know that there's additional people. I can hover over to see who those people are, as well as the icon of the multiple people showing me that it's a shared task. This will then multiply the estimated hours by the number of people. So if I were to put in, let's say, 2 estimated hours, it'll give me a total number of estimated hours of 8 hours, because I happen to have 4 people. And if we were to select that task to go into its details page, then we can get a bit of a breakdown as well. So, who is it assigned to, and then how many hours. So 4 staff, 2 hours each, coming out to 8 estimated hours. We have 0 actuals against it so far. This task will then show up on everyone's dashboard. Everyone can track time against it. Everyone can put comments on it, share it as they see fit, and then mark it as completed when it's done. So that is the item around shared tasks. You can add those really wherever you want. So I happen to be doing it in a schedule, but of course, if I'm going to add a task, then I can do it through that area as well. So it doesn't necessarily need to be in a schedule specifically. It can be on its own, just as its own item. But here we can see that in the schedule. And then I believe here, if we look at the Gantt view, that we'll get a bit of a different view as well. So notice how it's, instead of showing the specific person's initials, we're seeing the little multi-person icon, and we can see that it's multiple individuals. Drop in some dates, and we can see that the color is different as well. So bring that over here, expand it, and I now have this shared task to multiple individuals. So that concludes, the items. Oh, actually, there's one other thing that I wanted to show now that I think about it. One other item, one last thing, is that there is an option to now choose to share this Gantt with clients or third parties or whoever it is. Now you can choose to share portions of this Gantt. So if I select just certain tasks, actually I'm not sure why my option for just sharing some of those items isn't showing there. Oh, there it is. So we can choose to share just the selected items or the entire schedule. So if certain things aren't client visible, then we can deselect those. In this case, we'll share the entire schedule. And I can then choose to have a link for this. We could also generate a PDF. So you can just share the link or generate the PDF. So we have a PDF that we can then share with the client or the contractor, third party, whoever they might be. We can also export the task list into a spreadsheet, so you get all of that task data just in an Excel spreadsheet if you prefer. So much better sharing options. There wasn't really much of an option to share the visual side of things with your clients, but it's been significantly improved, and you can choose what it is you're sharing and what it is that you're not sharing. Emma, before we jump into our preview section, any questions or anything that you want me to address before we go there?
No, I think you're good, but I will address Brandy's written in a couple of questions, and I was just typing a response to her, but I may as well share it. The one piece of feedback that I've received the most since Shared Task has gone out is people saying, well, wait a second, I've put a bunch of people on this. One person marks it as completed. That is making it completed for everybody. So I'm going to take that feedback back to our designers and our developers, and we'll see what we can do to address that, because we are here, again, we're hearing that most often. That is the way it was intended to behave, but if we're hearing, again, enough people saying that that's frustration, then we can reconsider that. So at the moment, if one person who is part of the shared task marks as completed, that does complete it for everyone, but we are considering how to address that, or if we can address that, and so stay tuned. But yes, at the moment, that's how it's operating.
Okay, interesting. I didn't even really think about that, to be honest with you, but I can see how in real world practice,
yeah,
one, yeah, for sure.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, go ahead.
No, not at all. I mean, I suppose like once you kind of know it's going to do that, then as a user, it's like, okay, well, if I'm done my portion, doesn't mean that everyone else has done theirs, but I can see how, from a new user's perspective, or just someone who's used to working with tasks, I mean, I guess it's just natural to mark completed when you're done. So makes sense. So good feedback.
So thank you for asking that, and we'll keep gathering that feedback. And again, if people have that, please send it our way. And happy to hear any of your thoughts on all of the system. Thank you.
All right, so let's take a look at some of our previews. Now, the first preview that we're going to take a look at is an overview of the option for adjusting dates and bringing that functionality into the Gantt chart view. So what this allows you to do, the adjust dates feature, for anyone that's been using the schedule for a long time, you'll probably recognize the adjust dates area. It allows you to move an entire portion of the schedule, move the entire schedule by a certain amount of time, and then have everything kind of maintain the amount of working days between them. And you can move it based on the start of the schedule or by the end of the schedule. So that's being updated and being brought into the new schedule grid, as well as into the Gantt chart. And this will give you a bit of a preview, as well as some of the color coding that's coming to show, different things. So tasks that don't have dates, milestones that just have an end date, and those being displayed in a better way to help you recognize that, as well as the color coding for shared tasks and things like this. And then that will allow you to make those date adjustments and then see a preview, a shadow. Sorry, Emma, did you want to jump in there?
Oh, no, sorry, Mark, please. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no problem. So this will allow you to then see a shadow of, what that date adjustment will look like, and then make the decision of, do you want to make that adjustment? So I know that adjust dates feature is something that a lot of people have been asking for in the new version, and it'll be available both in the schedule grid, and we can see again a preview of that, but then also in the regular grid as well. So some of the bulk editing and adjust dates features will be brought into the new schedule grid, so that you can stay within that singular view and have access to all the features that you need. And yeah, so that's a bit of a preview of some of the adjust dates feature. That's pretty basic. I mean, that's things that I think people would expect and are aware of the fact that that's coming. But next, let's take a look at something that I know a lot of people have a lot of interest in. So next, we're going to be taking a look at a preview of function points resource allocation features that our team has been working on. Now, of course, it's really important to throw out some disclaimers. So first of all, of course, this is all prototype information, and what you see now could be could vary, could be different from what you actually receive in the system, as well as it's not really possible to give a specific timeline right now as to when you might see some of these items, and most likely things do get released in chunks as opposed to all at once. And then furthermore, there's additional items that we're working on right now that we're not previewing today, so other things that are being done, and how and when things get released can shift and change and things like that. So it's important to just to mention those things. But with that being said, right now we're going to take a look at a preview of some of the resource allocation prototyping that's been done based on the copious amounts of your client feedback and testing and evaluation that we've done with many agencies. So, you know, the story around these features is really around, you know, project managers and traffic managers being, you know, needing to be able to see what individuals are working on a day-to-day basis, make adjustments to what they happen to be doing and when they're doing those things, and then seeing how that then affects the load balance and the availability of the staff people to determine, you know, make decisions based on new work that is coming in. Right now, the resource allocation feature in function point, it shows you, you know, overall load capacity, but it's not very good at showing you, you know, what it is a specific person is working on a specific day, and that was something that a lot of people had been requesting. So the concept here is that, you know, you'll be able to look at the different individuals. So Helvetica Cat, you know, Verdana, Ariel, these are individuals, people whose parents clearly liked different font types. And then you'll be able to see, you know, for your roles and your individuals, you know, the concept is you'll be able to see what it is that they're working on, and then what is their capacity, what's their allocated or fully allocated or over allocated distribution of time. If they're on vacation or not available, then that will be available. That will be shown as well. And then if there's just no hours available, so a weekend as opposed to a day that's officially booked off. So this will then allow us to look and see, and in fact, let's take a look at this next page here. You know, what is it that a person is specifically working on? So notice that the taskbars are spanning multiple days, and it's showing you how many hours are you know, that task is making up. You know, in, you know, how many hours that specific task has, but then also, you know, what the resource allocation is like for these individuals on these days. So, you know, Verdana is booked up, you know, 8 hours a day really evenly for all of these days. It looks like, you know, our copycat copywriter is, you know, has a couple hours free on these days, and then the designer Helvetica Cat here is overbooked by quite a bit. Hovering over the task allows you to see more information on the task, and then eventually you'll be able to edit it directly from this page as well. Now, something that has been discussed a lot, and this is something I've had a lot of conversations on, is the concept of how the system allocates the time and how it displays the time across the resource allocation grid. Now, the most common request, as opposed to end loading the time, is to a desire to have it be even loading that time, which I think in a lot of cases makes sense. In a lot of cases, it's going to be, I think, depending on how you you know, assign your tasks, it might have how that time evens out across all the days might end up being a very small amount of time on each day. But I believe that is the goal, is having that evenly allocate the time across all of the days that the task is spanning, as opposed to end loading it and then pulling the time back, which is what the system is currently doing. Am I correct in my descriptions there? Do we still have Emma on the line?
Sorry, I muted myself so thoroughly that I couldn't unmute myself. Yes, what you said sounds perfectly correct. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so I know that even loading is something that a lot of people have been looking for a while. So, you know, in the testing and the prototyping, that's something that's being looked at as a way of allocating that time. And then being able to make edits and adjustments as well is something that we're looking to put into that resource allocation, so that you'll be able to select an item and then make edits to that item from here as well. Now, something that relates to that editing concept is the ability to preview what you're doing. So, right now, if you make any edits on resource allocation, when you save that, it automatically adjusts everything. It adjusts the person's dashboard, it adjusts the schedule, their individual task details page. All those pages are adjusted right away. The new prototyping, the concepts that are being tested is around being able to see what those pending changes are, and of course they'll be displayed in a different way, make a whole bunch of adjustments, and then save those pending changes so that you can mess around with this. You can play a little bit and play around with the allocation, see what the end result is, and then make a call on whether or not you want to actually go through with that before you're actually committing the system and committing your team to those adjustments. This is handy as well when it comes to alerts, so that if you're changing things, you change it 4 or 5 times, person isn't getting 4 or 5 alerts, because you can make those adjustments and choose to save once as opposed to saving each time. So I know that is something that personally I would really get a kick out of, because when I'm working with agencies and I'm working with this resource allocation, it's something that I do comment on quite a bit, is not necessarily saving changes until you know what it is that you want to do, and this will help to resolve that conundrum. And then lastly, on this item is drag and drop functionality. So, as part of the testing on this, some of the things that we're hoping to be able to have included is the ability for you to do drag and drop functionality in the same way that you're doing on the Gantt chart currently, so that when you're not having to select it and then use your keyboard to make those edits, where you can actually just select an item and then drag it to other assets, or drag it across different days, and then have that adjust the allocation and also have it adjust the person's individual task page. So there's a lot of really cool stuff, related to this. I'm really excited about it. I know that I've been involved quite a bit with the prototyping and the testing and the evaluation of this feature. A lot of our team members have, and a lot of our clients have as well. So something that I'm looking forward to seeing and versions of, and seeing where this goes in the not too distant future. Again, things can be adjusted and changed, and it's still in testing phases, but I know that there's a lot of people that are really looking forward to this. Any questions or comments that you'd want to throw in at this time?
No, we haven't been hearing anything, which is fine. I've heard from Lori, and I'm going to send her something separately. But no, thank you for showing this, and I'm really hoping it's something we can share with our users in the, like you said, not too distant future.
Yep. So one last thing that I did want to share as well, and I did see this on the bottom page of the kind of the descriptions of these items that was sent to me, was that we would be open and happy to receive any requests to be involved in any kind of early testing of these features. So if you would like to be involved in that, if you would like to have early access in a testing environment, or be involved in some of the evaluation of these features, the best way to do that is to email product@functionpoint.com. Again, that's just the word product@functionpoint.com, and that will go to our product team, and then they can put you on a list of individuals that are interested in testing and being involved in future evaluation of this feature, and as well as other things as well. So I do encourage everyone that would be interested in that to, again, email product@functionpoint.com. We'd be happy to get you involved and allow you to help to be even further involved in driving some of the future of the product. So we'll be looking forward to hearing from anyone that would be interested. And on that note, we're through all of our content a little bit earlier today. It was a bit of a special webinar. Again, we're just previewing some of the things that are coming. So I really appreciate everyone joining in to check this out. We will send a follow-up email with some of the information, including like links to the iPhone app information page and things like that. But again, if you have any questions related to the system or requests for future webinars, the best way to contact us is success@functionpoint.com. And if you have any interest in future product testing, then you'll want to reach out to the product team at product@functionpoint.com. Anything else before we sign off here?
I would also just add, I know that a lot of our customers, and I really thank them, are participants in our AHA Ideas portal. But for those of you who haven't signed up with that or don't want to go through that step, there is, I have a new email address that you can reach out with, which is just ideas, not just ideas, ideas at functionpoint.com. So if you have ideas about what you would like to see happening in the product, you can submit via email, or yeah, through that submit an idea section that Mark's showing, you can go and join the portal where you can submit ideas that way. But if you want to just shoot us a quick email with, oh, I'd love it if it did this or did that or did this differently, we really do welcome that feedback. So you can send it via email or send it via that submit an idea link, which will take you to a program that you can sign in and then vote for other ideas you see and submit that way as well. But keep them coming. Love to hear the feedback. It's always welcome.
Yeah, for sure. We do get a lot, and there's always, always welcoming more. So please do interact with that, and be looking forward to seeing that feedback. And I guess on that note, looks like we have all of those. I think you had mentioned there's a few other questions we'll answer offline, but otherwise I think we're good. So, we'll stay on for another, maybe 30 seconds or a minute or so, and if anything comes in, then we can address that. But otherwise, I want to thank everyone for your time today, and looking forward to seeing you on future webinars. Take care. Bye now.